Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, and thank you for coming and joining Fearless Females today. I'm so excited to have all you wonderful listeners there. Today, our guest is Dr. Kelly Schuh, and I think Kelly's superpower, if I had to guess one, is this. She makes you feel like you are enough. And that is an amazing superpower as far as I'm concerned. Like, she helps you know that you have worth, that you are of value, and find that value in yourself. And who does not want to talk to someone who makes them feel better about themselves? So I'm so excited to get started today. Let's listen to Dr. Kelly. Good morning, Fearless Females. Thank you so much for joining us. I have as a guest today, Dr. Kelly Schuh. She is a worth and wealth alchemist, international speaker, and coach. And I've had a chance to kind of get to know Kelly over the past month or so. And I'm really excited to hear what she has to say. She's so positive. Like, when you get done talking to Kelly, you just feel much better about yourself, whoever you are. So Kelly, thank you so much for helping us out today. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I remember our initial connection out on a paddleboard. What a great place to meet somebody, with a group of women on a paddleboard. So yeah, and ever since we've just connected.
Yeah, I think that's great. I was not a great paddleboarder. In case anyone is wondering, I was terrible at it. But I did stand up once, and that I'm proud of that. So
yes, absolutely. Fearless woman, fearless.
So Kelly, tell me my favorite question. And my first question is always, I'm a reader. Tell me what your favorite book is.
It's always so hard to pick one book. I'm like, pick one book, but I will choose the book that I have gone back to so many times. And I actually have it right here for those that are watching. It's The Untethered Soul, and it's by Michael Singer. And the reason I love this book is that I tend to be a person, type A, do, go. I say go, grow, and then slow. And so I tend to also attract those kind of doers, high achievers. And we forget the magic is in the slowing down. And to slow down is to, like in the Marines, they say something like, to slow down is to move fast. And so this deep remembering of like, let's slow down and collect our thoughts and all of that. So when I get ramped up, it's a book I can return to remember to slow down and to be present. The very thing I teach.
Does it give you like how-to suggestions? Because I am that type A personality too. And it's so hard for me.
I wouldn't say it's actually simpler than that. It's not like a bullet list of like do A and then B and then C. It's the story of Michael Singer, who was a very successful man in business. And it's his journey of what I would describe of more spiritual journey of really leaning into his meditation. He was a meditation teacher. And so really the gift is truly, it's as simple as this, just stop, right? Like, how hard is that? You don't have to read a book in that, but really the magic of his life, that next level of fulfillment, happened because he was willing to be quiet. And I know you and I both have a faith in God, and this knowing this is when we're quiet, we can hear the messages, right? And so I would say that's the essence of the book is slow down, just slow down and stop.
I love that. I actually have been working my way through my book list of suggestions from the different interviews that I've done on Fearless Females. And I take away so much for them. So I really appreciate the suggestion. And I find that it's like revisiting a friend. I enjoy my interviews with you guys so much, and I always learn something. And then I read the book that you suggest, 3 or 4 months later, and then I learn something new. So thank you for suggesting that. I appreciate it. So Kelly, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you are today? Kind of what do you do? Like, who are you? Let us know.
Yeah. So the doctor comes from chiropractic. And so I started my chiropractic business business back in 2004. And I tell people that I'm probably unemployable at this point because I really haven't had a job since I was maybe 25. And so I knew I wanted to start my own business. I didn't really want to go and work for somebody. And so I started a chiropractic wellness business. And then fast forward, so that was 2004. In 2010, I was pregnant with our first child. And I had a condition, think of it as morning sickness on steroids. And so it was challenging, really challenging to be so nauseous and sick every single day. And so I sent all of my patients to a colleague of mine. And that was what I call the Great Awakening, because all of this time of being pretty much bedridden, your thoughts get really busy around like your life purpose and what you're meant to do. And while I love the chiropractic profession, the one thing that I got really clear during that time was one word, and it was impact. And I remember a moment that it kind of just came. I was actually, it was yet another time of getting sick. And I'm looking down the porcelain throne because I was sick, probably the 10th time that day, and so weak and so vulnerable. And it was like, okay, impact was the word. And there was this thing called the internet. And I knew that I could have great impact if I could bundle my gifts in a more leveraged way. And so the decision was made is I'm going to try something different. And I never went back to chiropractic full time. I kind of wrapped up the business and transitioned into motherhood. And then that was my first venue of starting an online business. I created a community. I created an Amazon bestseller. And that was the beginning of my journey. And then asking the question, well, what do I do now? Really came from time 5 years into that, being a coach. And I was broke. I was not thriving financially. In fact, I say I was broke, but not broken. And so the turning point in why I do what I do really came from a place of, I was on a call with a coach of mine, and I was ready to give up, because I wasn't making any money and more was going out than was coming in. So it didn't make sense to me to continue this thing called coaching. So ready to go back to the chiropractic profession. And she said, I think you should double your rates. And I felt nauseous and I got the butterflies in my tummy and I'm like, oh my gosh. And she said, well, what's the worst that can happen? I said, no one signs up. She says, great. Then, and here are the words. She says, I dare you. And I'm the kind of woman, if you dare me, watch out. And so that one dare transformed my business. And so I doubled my rates that day, never looked back. And it was that $50K a year business turned to $150. And I tell women it's about who I became in the journey of feeling worthy and really building out who is this next level multi-six-figure CEO? Who is she? And what is she all about? And so anyway, this is the body of work I now train female entrepreneurs and high-level C-suite women all around worthiness, feeling worthy, and taking our businesses and our lives to the next level.
And I think that's so important. I've had a chance to talk to many women. And one of the things I keep hearing is this idea of imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I have to be better than everyone else in my field, whatever that field is. I feel like and I'm sitting here going, oh my goodness, you guys are so amazing. Look at the things you're doing. Look at how great you are. And a lot of times they just can't see it in themselves. So I love that you're highlighting and helping them find that. 25. Is that when you started your business? Like you went out on your own?
So, gosh, numbers are not my strength. Even helping women with money and profits. It's so funny. I'm like, what year? So I think it was, 2004 is when I started that bricks and mortar chiropractic business. And prior to that, I remember working for a urologist, kind of as helper around the office, really exploring medicine and what I thought I wanted to do and all of that. That's another story of how I found chiropractic. But that was the last job, right? Right before I went to chiropractic school. So it would have been earlier.
Oh my God. So earlier, younger than 25 years old.
No, I would say I was about 25 years old when I had that job with the urologist.
Yeah.
Dr. Jan Ogletree. Yeah.
So that takes some real courage. to give up a salary, a set way of doing things and be like, well, I think I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to make this happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I had that was the last job. And then when I got into chiropractic school, I was very blessed. I got a lot of scholarships, academic scholarships. And so I didn't work when I was in chiropractic school. And then when I graduated, it was like, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to actually go start a practice? Are you going to go work for someone for about $30,000 a year and put your blood, sweat, and tears? Or are you going to go for it? And I went for it. And I'm so glad that I did. And I moved back to Boulder, Colorado, where I did my undergrad. And all of my friends had kind of moved on and moved out. So I really started afresh when I started that chiropractic practice. I really didn't know anyone in the community. So I remember not even having a bed. Like that's how, like, you start at the bottom and you build up. So it doesn't matter where you are today. We all start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it is that fearless inner, like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? So I sleep on a new mattress, right?
Exactly. Like one day, you'll afford a mattress and a team and all the things. But I think that going into business, it just starts with being fearless because there's so many unknowns.
Mm-hmm. What is the best investment that you've made in yourself? Is there something you can kind of look back on and say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did that?
I would say coach. So that coach that dared me back in 2015, that one dare transformed my life. And what I realize now in retrospect is I was running what I now call the lack pattern, which is the overgiving, the undervaluing our services as women, give. But guess what? We're not so good at doing. Flipping that and the receiving piece. And so I still work with Elaine and to this day. And so, had she not dared me because I was in despair, I probably would have gone back to chiropractic, which was a profession I love. And if that was the trajectory, I mean, I was good at that. So, but investing in Elaine and investing in her year after year after year after year, because coaching is a thing that if we want to be peak performance experts, whatever our chosen field is, I believe that we have to have a coach by our side because we can't see what we can't see. And so they bring the mirror up and they help us work through our things. And, if Olympians have coaches, why don't we? And so I think that is the cumulative best investment I've ever made in myself.
Any suggestions for how to find a coach that fits with you? Because I've heard that a lot of times and I believe it too, but I've also been through a couple of different coaches and I've had people tell me, oh, coach, will depend on the season you're in. Sometimes one is better, sometimes another is better. Like, is there a way to find that coach that's going to fit and motivate and grow you?
Yeah. So reflecting back to Elaine has been my coach since 2015, and that's not in the absence of hiring other coaches, right? And so I would say the first thing is to get crystal clear on what your needs are, right? Like, where do you feel that you need the most support around? Because there's coaches that specialize in different things. And so really identifying where your weakness is and what you really specifically need help with. And then from there, I would say start talking to your friends, right? Like, here's what I know is high achievers tend to hang out with high achievers. And so just like if you ask me, how would you find a good doctor? You start talking to the people that you know and you get referrals. And so I think that referral is probably one of the best places. And, and looking at the specificity, like, for example, for me as a coach for women in business, is that I use human design as a framework, as a roadmap, which many of your listeners might not know what that is, but you can think of it as, I can look at your date of birth, place of birth, time of birth, and really understand how you're meant to succeed. And so that I don't make random recommendations. I make recommendations for your growth based on, it's kind of like a lot of people do know strengths analysis or some other like disc analysis, other things I've also used in the past. And so really finding someone that resonates with you and what your goals are, and that level of specificity can make all the difference in the world.
I love that idea. That very unique to you. And I love your idea of coaching too. I like to think of myself as a financial coach. Like, I am not here to do it for you. You guys are smart. You can do it yourself. But you know what? I am going to be your biggest cheerleader and I am going to help you down your path. So I love that idea of coaching and growing, and all of us need one. And I think, to your point, more than one.
Yeah.
A lot of times you need coaches in different areas or at different times or with different problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's great is that because Elaine has been so amazing, she knows my psyche inside and out. Like she can call me out like nobody's business, right? Because she's worked with me and we have patterns. We have habitual patterns that will circle back around given enough time. And so, but yeah, like she's not the person that I would say, hey, help me with, for example, help me with a launch strategy or help me hire a team. Like, so we have different seasons and different needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those are short-term and some of those are long-term.
What is the worst advice someone ever gave you? And did you take it?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Here it is. Straight up. I remember when I started my chiropractic practice, the question is, well, where are you going to start this business? And so at that point in time, I was single and no kids, and I could move wherever I wanted in the world. And so after kind of looking all around in the Pacific Northwest, and I came back to my alma mater, University of Colorado in Boulder, and I love Boulder. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was working with a chiropractic coach for chiropractic management. Again, a different season of my life. And what they were doing is they were looking at the competition in different areas. And both that coach and one of my best friends who's a chiropractor said, do not start a practice in Boulder because of the competition. The competition is so high in Boulder, you can throw a stone and you're almost guaranteed to hit another chiropractic office. So the recommendation, both by this coach and a dear friend, said, don't start in Boulder. And here's the truth, is when I would be in Boulder, my heart would sing. It felt right to me. And I knew in my bones, this is where I was supposed to be. And so I did not follow that advice. I followed my heart and what felt right. Mm-hmm. And Boulder is a place I thrive. So thank God and that's where I met my husband in Boulder, right? So there is something about sometimes the advice isn't right for you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so glad I did not take that advice. And then marry that with my belief is that in many ways, well, here's a motto that I have, which is scarcity is an illusion. So that idea that the competition is too high in Boulder, well, if you run the numbers, yes. And what I would say is, and when you know your unique selling point, your USP, or what makes you unique, or what your gifts are, there is no competition because there's no one like you on the planet, which is why I love human design. So I think that years ago, going against that recommendation, I still follow it today of like following what's right for you. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes advice is bad. And I'm so glad I didn't follow it.
That's great. And it's good that you had the confidence at that time, in the beginning of your career, to be like, to listen to yourself and to know what you needed and what you wanted.
Absolutely.
What about looking back on your journey? Is there something that you are like, oh, you know what? If I knew then what I know now, I totally would have done that differently. I would have handled that differently.
Wow. We all make mistakes along the way. I remember a coach, again, another coach that I was working with, and it was not that long ago, actually. And she was looking at my social media. And she said, Dr. Kelly, here's what I see. I see some pictures of you as the worth and wealth alchemist. Really, you present yourself as a woman that can help women around wealth. And we love that side of your social media presence. And yet there was another side of you that looks like a camp counselor. Exactly what she said. You look like a camp counselor. And so I think it's a mixed message. And so what we suggest is you take down all of those images of you basically doing what you love, although she didn't say that. Like, I love to backpack. I love to ski. I love the outdoors. It's all the reasons why I moved to Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
And so she was asking me to kind of remove a big part of my life. In fact, my version of wealth includes all of those things.
Right.
And that was advice that I took that was bad advice, because what I now realize is it's the whole me. Like, I don't want to hide aspects of myself. And when I look at the clients I've served over the years, many of them like the outdoors things that I love. They're also runners, and they also love to camp, and they also love to ski. So by me hiding that part of me as a social presence, they're only seeing a snippet of me. And I think that people are looking for the whole you, not just like how you show up in business, but they want to know who you are as a person. And I think as a brand, it's very important that we do show like the whole part of ourselves. So that was bad advice that I took that I wish I didn't. And I'm back to like being all of me online.
I was just going to ask, did you put your pictures of hiking back up there and hiking and all that stuff?
Absolutely. It's kind of like, I think I've heard a lot of advice by other business coaches, and I think it's old, dated advice, which is keep your business and keep your personal. But you know who's consistent with all of that is you. And so I think that that's also really bad advice. Like, I encourage people to really well, let me say it this way. When you have a challenge in your personal life, it does impact your business. And so you better get it handled. And so anyway, I think that that's dated advice.
Yeah.
Especially as women with kids and
things. Yeah, I know. You bring to mind, I remember years ago asking them to take my family information off of my bio, because I have 5 kids and I was afraid that I wouldn't be perceived as professional because I was a mom, and I've come full circle. I'm so proud of my kids and what they've done and who they've become and how I've helped them to grow, And so, and that idea of being who you are, both in life and in work, I think is really important. And I actually think the younger generation does a way better job of that than I did.
They do. Absolutely. And I think when you shared with me when I met you the first time and sharing that you were a mom of 5, my initial response is a superpower, right? Thinking, oh my gosh, here's a woman who's successful in business and she's a mom to 5. Like, so the very thing that you would have perceived years ago of maybe a weakness or it not a weakness, that you wouldn't be, quote, professional, right? I look at it as a superpower, like, oh my gosh, what an amazing woman.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, seriously.
Dr. Kelly, what if you could go back and talk to yourself at 20 or 21 years old, early on in your career, you can pick 21, 22, 23. What would you tell her?
What would I tell her? I think I want to come back to that scarcity is an illusion, because it's something that I really believe to be so true. And I think that when we really can embrace that, we stop comparing ourselves to others. So early 20s, like if you go back to my early 20s, right? It was like when it relates to school, for example, I had to get straight A's, like nothing less would do. And I remember a turning point in medical school where I had, in the beginning of school, this is hysterical. In the beginning of school, I was the kid that was right up front, like front of the room, like you don't want to miss a darn thing. And there's a girl in the back of the room that became one of my best friends in school. And I looked at over time, like that first B that I got in chiropractic, like I was actually, there was a C. Let's be real. There was a C that I got. I'd never gotten a C in my whole, career in my undergrad and everything. So it was a blow to my ego, and it was a blow to, oh my gosh, I'm not making it. And so I remember Robin teaching me, okay, lean back a little bit. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to ask you what grade you got in A&P or what grade you got. It's more about you being all of you and having a life. Right? And so going back to that scarcity as an illusion, I think I was still trying to impress outside like others or being the perfectionist and being so hard on myself. It's just to relax the reins a little bit. And so I went from being the very front of the class to somewhere in the middle and not taking things so, I wasn't so hard on myself. And so that's what I would tell my 20-something-year-old self is scarcity is illusion, is that there's enough for all of us to succeed. And we really can relax a bit and we don't have to get straight A's in life. Like that really, and it's what, I would tell my daughter, like, we want a more balanced life. We want to be fulfilled. Perfection is an illusion anyway, I guess is the other thing I would say. And I also think that's why we have so much depression amongst our young people, because they're trying to be perfect and they're trying to project this image that's not even real.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea because I was raised that same way and I behave that same way. Like anything less than an A. My first kid came home with a C and was like fine with it. I'm like having a hyperventilation. I'm like, what do you mean? I honestly considered going back and redoing a class during my MBA because I got 1B. So
yeah. So you get that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that especially as high achieving women, we put way too much pressure on ourselves and we compare ourselves to others, right? That's that externalization of worth, like worth outside of ourselves. And the reality is that the worth comes from the inside, not the outside. So when we can stop comparing and we can lean into collaboration, right? I have a whole manifestation, Queen of Worth manifestation motto, and one of the things is collaboration over competition and comparison. So that's really the essence of one of the values that we hold here at my company.
I love that. I love that idea. That idea of collaboration and lifting and helping. And that's, obviously that's why I do what I do anyway.
Exactly.
With the podcast and stuff like that. But I think that's so important to teach young people and to relearn yourself, that you don't try and achieve perfection. You can be the very best you can be, but perfection is something that is,
it's an illusion. It doesn't exist. And you know what? When we set ourselves up for perfection, we set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
And I've heard it said that this perfectionism thing, what it really is a high achieving person's word for the fear of failure. So when they're like, I'm a perfectionist, what they're really saying underneath of that is I'm scared to death of failing. So they overcompensate. And I know the loop quite well. And one of the things that, as I said, that I really practice is like, let's get present. Let's get present to the here and now. And really following our own blueprint for success, because there's no one else like you on the planet.
Yeah.
So when we can really be with that, again, scarcity is illusion. Like there is no other person like you on the planet, but you forget, and you compare and you compare and you compare. So like lean back and get present and take some breaths and know that you're enough.
Yeah.
Know that you're enough and that you're worthy.
Oh, that if there is one word I could give to the entire world to help them to feel good, that would be the word enough. You are enough. Yeah, I love that. You actually don't strike me as someone that's scared of anything. So so this question is really interesting. What were you most scared of when you started on your journey? And does it still scare you? Were you scared of anything? Maybe you weren't.
Of course. Of course I was scared. In fact, in human design, one of the things that I continually work through is the fear of failure. And I think that we can really be fearful of that failure. And you know how it shows up? It can also show up as procrastination. And then we're really hard on ourselves. So yes, absolutely. So let's take, for example, I did what I call niche switch, right? And my niche switch was I was working with women who, I was working with their self-worth to find love. And they had a condition where they had a diagnosis that created a lot of shame in them. And I built a very successful business. It's called Pink Tent. And Pink Tent was like that business that I said I took from 50K to 150K in 1 year. And I was thriving in that business. And after several years, I was burned out. And my soul wanted something different. And so I was in a high-level mastermind, and one of my friends in that mastermind, it was during COVID, and she said, "Gosh, Dr. Kelly, you're still thriving, and many of us are struggling." And going back to that scarcity is an illusion, this friend said, "Have you ever thought about really working with women in business and helping them around the relationship to money and scarcity? And the whole world is falling apart, but you're doing okay. Like there's something different about you. And have you ever thought of really making that pivot from women finding self-love and the courage to find love again and to be healthy, to women in business being wealthy?" And so it was, I kind of sat with that and went, you know what? That's a really great idea, because a lot of business women are struggling right now. Why? Is because they're believing all the scarcity. And not to say that it was a challenging time. It was a really challenging time for everyone on the planet. It was the great pause. And in that great pause was my great pause of going, you know what? I would love to actually name and claim that I work with women in business and high-level C-suite women. And it was a scary pivot, because I had been very successful with Pink Tent. And here I am in the midst of the pandemic and going, okay. And here's the reality is I had worked with women. There are women that have worked with me over a decade. And these women years ago, because a decade ago, I wasn't working with women in business. And these women have stayed with me because they were business owners. Like I see women who have stayed with me because we got them their love life figured out. And they got married and they got kids. They got everything that they hired me for. These were business women. So I was already doing it, but I really wasn't letting the world know that I was doing it.
Yeah.
And so that was really scary, making that pivot from, feeling, because I was, and Pink Tent still is out there, but I was really scared. Like, what is this going to look like? And can I really do this? And so I was scared. But you know what? I just made a decision. What's the worst that can happen? Well, no one signs up with me. Right. I went through that whole dare with myself that I had done years ago. And so, it was really inspired by a woman who said, "I really think you should do this because you're doing with us in this mastermind all the time."
Yeah.
So it was scary starting a new company right from the start. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there are those questions always at the beginning, whether it's the beginning of your career or the beginning of a new career or the beginning of a pivot or the beginning of something, am I good enough? Am I going to be successful? And taking yourself through that journey of, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah. What's the worst thing that can happen is, it doesn't take off. And you go back to what you were doing, which was successful, right? And I never closed that business. I still work with that company, with Pink Tent, but my passion right now is in women in business. And I'm having so much fun. And so when I rose from 50K to 150, one of the first things that I did is I took myself through an exercise that I now work with other women called the worthiness triad. And it answers this question: who do you be? Not what do you do in that next version of you, but really, and I create a blueprint for these women. So I do now for them what I did for myself years ago. So when I made that pivot from Pink Tent to Worth International, I went back to the tools that got me from 50K to 150K, right? Like that next level is I needed to decide in advance, who is this CEO of the next phase of my life with this Queen of Worth brand? And so I had to reinvent myself. In many ways. And this is what I do, it's what I do with others now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You talk about niche marketing, and you always have to come up with your perfect client avatar, and where does, what do they look like, and what do they blah blah. It's an interesting idea to kind of turn that back on yourself and say, okay, I'm starting this new thing. What do I look like here, and where do I hang out, and what do I do with my time, and how how am I in this new space? And it helps you visualize too, I guess. Like
Absolutely.
how successful you always visualize successful, right? So
Absolutely. And I think that over the years, I've also redefined what success is to me. And I realize that, for example, one of the things when I look at my business and how I've structured it, family has always been the most important thing for me. Like,
Mhm.
I have never wanted to put my business beyond my family, but there have been seasons in my life where I was working so hard, right, that it was taking a lot of time from my family. And so when I made the pivot to Worth International, I knew that family still had to be number one. And I have a lot of what I call white space in my calendar. So you asked the question, what did you fear? And one of the things that I feared is that if I take a brand new business and go way beyond what Pink Tent ever did, it must mean that it will be less quality time and less time with my family at the expense of family time. So I actually had to get really clear on that fear and change my mindset of no, it doesn't mean if you take your business to the next level that it means harder work and less time with your family. So coming back to the things that I value most, and families first, right? And so
Mhm.
I've designed a business where I do have a lot of white space with my family. And so, yeah, I would say that was a big fear of mine.
Yeah. What about did you run into any unique challenges because you were a woman? I've had women who are like, yeah, I was like, I don't know, like challenges around childbirth or taking time off or something like that. But did you run into any of those?
I would say no, and because it was how I set myself up, and me really creating and designing a life. My husband calls it a life by design, and
Mhm.
so we really consciously created that even before getting married. Like, what do we want our life to look like? And so, one thing I will say though, because I did look at the questions, some of the questions beforehand before we jumped on today, and it sparked a memory that I had forgotten about. So here's where it showed up. It showed up very young in my life. And at the age of, so I was working at the age of 13 and working as a sailing instructor in the summertime. I was doing sailing in the afternoon and then I would bus tables at night. So that was kind of like my summertime gig as a kid. And of course, parents had to like sign off that it was okay and all of that. But so at the age of like 13 and 14, teaching sailing and windsurfing, I had a friend, his name was Billy Lucas, and I'll never forget Billy Lucas because he started working for the same company like 2 or 3 years later, right? And I
Mhm.
worked for the same sailing company from the age of 13 through my sophomore year in college. So it was a
Wow.
long-term gig.
Mhm.
Several years into it, I was probably not several, so I was probably 16 or so. And Billy comes to me after doing very similar work, and he was brand new. And he's like, I just got a raise. And I was like, really, Billy, what are you making? And he told me, and again, back then, I don't remember what it was, but it was much more than I was making. And the business owner was definitely, comes from, we'll just say old school Middle East. That's all I'll say. And so he had a different perspective of young girls versus young boys.
Mhm.
But when I found out Billy Lucas was making so much more money than me, I was hurt. I was devastated. I was such a hard worker. And I came home to my mom and I'm like, Mom, you're not going to believe it. Billy Lucas is new here and he's making so much money, more money than I am. And I've been working for this company for 3 years. And she said, Kelly, then you need to stand up for yourself.
Mhm.
And I did. And so I think that that was an early planting of a seed that we as women need to close this gender pay gap because it's not okay. It's not okay that we make a percentage of what men make. And so I think that that seed come from a pain point. Like, because to me, I'm like, me and Billy Lucas, we're buddies. Like we do the same kind of work. We're side by side. And
Mhm.
so early on having that experience of being paid less because I was a girl. So it did end up, I did get a raise. I did get back, but you know what? In reality, I should have been making more than Billy Lucas because I'd been with the companies that much longer. 3 years since I was a kid.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
passion there about the gender pay gap.
I love it. Yep. I agree 100%. And I tell my team members, I'm like, ask for what you're worth and always stand up. I had one team member not too long ago say, am I allowed to ask for a raise? I'm like, yes, advocate.
Advocate for yourself. I can't tell you how many conversations I have throughout a given week of women, if they're in business for themselves, raising their rates. And if they're C-suite women, asking for a raise. In fact, there's a gal that I'm working with right now, and she's amazing. She's worked her way up the corporate ladder at a very young age. So you look at her colleagues, and she's one of the younger ones, and being a woman. And I said, well, when was the last time that you asked for a raise? And she says, I don't know. Like, we do the year-end review, but I really haven't. And I was like, you are kidding me. So it had been like 3 years in a major corporation. And you know what? She had received small incremental raises just because that's kind of standard to keep them going.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, advocating for her to really next level. And she is getting paid much less than her male colleagues. So we're going in there. She's a new client of mine. We're going to go in there and help her to advocate for herself for what she deserves.
Amen.
Amen.
What is the thing that you are most proud of?
So when you ask that question, I've got the mama hat on first.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then what comes up beyond that is kind of like the business hat. So if it's okay, I'd like to answer both.
Yeah.
Right. So the most proud really is of my daughter, right? She is 14 years old and she is just crushing it. And what I mean by that is she just got an academic scholarship to a local private school. And we're so proud of her. So she's changing friend groups and everything's new.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been doing gymnastics since she was since she was 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's her passion in life. And I've watched this kid go from 3 years old to last year getting second regionally in gymnastics. And the thing that I'm so impressed by is that she didn't make the next team for they didn't just give it to her. Like, she went from silver to gold to platinum. And it's hard when you don't ascend with your teammates. And so last year she got second in uneven bars in regionals, and she got a lot of some other awards. But the year prior, she didn't even make it to that next tier, where some of her other friends made it to that next level of the team. And my kiddo just kept on going and going and going. And she never misses a practice. And she's just so committed. So anyway, I celebrate her. I celebrate her for the commitment of doing what she loves, never missing a beat, and not giving up. Not giving up when she didn't make the team. And it paid off. She wasn't ready for it. She wasn't ready for it. So not getting that immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I love that.
So that's the proud mama moment. And then in business, I think that I'm most proud of really going after my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, when I was a kiddo, writing was really challenging for me. In fact, I would avoid classes where there was a lot of writing assignments, and I would get anxious and almost not panic attacks, but highly anxious as a young person for writing. And here I am, I've written an Amazon bestseller, and I faced my fears, and and I have a life that I love, and it's because I decided to create that. As I said, my husband and I call it the life by design.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that, fears don't come up, because they do. They do. And they still do. And so, I'm proud of myself for not following the herd, so to speak, and really carving out a life that I love.
I like that idea of life by design, like deliberately thinking. And I had another guest that talked about going back and revisiting, are you still on that path to your life by design that the life that you designed for yourself, checking in and making sure. So I love that idea. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any advice for someone, young lady who's just starting down? I mean, your path is would she be starting as a chiropractic? Would she be starting her own business? I mean, your path has been windy and very successful. Is there any advice you'd give to young women just starting down her journey?
It goes back to the L'Oreal slogan, "You're worth it."
Mm-hmm.
And Worth International was built upon this idea of every woman is enough and every woman is worthy. Mm-hmm. And so our inner journey is a reflection of what we see show up in our world, our opportunities, and the things that we desire, start with the heart, but it really is how worthy do you feel. And so this idea of you're worth it and you're enough, no matter what it is that you want, it does require that inner work, right? To get in. And this is where, for some of your audience, it might sound woo, right? But I'm going to call it out because the woo works. But when you're in vibrational alignment with that which you want, then it shows up, right? Like when I was going back to when I was running what I call that lack pattern, which is overgiving, undercharging, undervaluing. When I was in that feedback loop, that neurological feedback loop, I wasn't in the abundance feedback loop. And so when I doubled my rates, I had to step into a new way of being. Nothing changed other than my mindset. Like I delivered the same experience and the same coaching, but it was the inner journey. And so I would say you're worth it. And so the 5 pillars of Worth International spell worth. W is wealth. O is oneness. R is your relationships. T is time management, and H is your health. And if one of those pillars isn't thriving, I believe for many women, it's because of this inner not feeling worthy. So you're worth it. You're worth it. Yeah. Whatever it is that you want in life, you're worth it.
That is a good message. Honestly, let's just put it on a big sign, a slogan. You're worth it. You're enough.
Yes. Yes, that's where the branding of Queen of Worth came from, is like, you're all queens. You're all sovereign beings, especially, we are so lucky. I know that your listeners are probably from all around the world. I feel very fortunate to be an American citizen with the freedoms, that I have to start a business and to go out and create what I want in my life. And so no matter where you are as a woman listening all around the world, whatever it is that you are wanting to create, you're worthy of it. And that includes love, right? That includes love and connection with God and, creating that white space in your calendar for self-care. I believe that the women that aren't making space for these things or aren't excelling in these things, many of them, they just don't feel worthy of it.
Dr. Kelly, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I have really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm vowed to journal and take away and go ahead and act on these things, because I'm so uplifted and I grow so much, and then I have to come back and listen again. So I'm gonna write it down and take it with me into my life. I really appreciated it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. What a joy it has been to have this conversation with you.
If I have a listener that wants to get in touch and ask questions or get some advice from you, how does she do that?
So on almost all the social media platforms, my handle is my name, which is Dr. So Dr. Kelly, Kelly, Schuh, Schuh. So Dr. Kelly Schuh. And, check us out. Consider booking a prosperity breakthrough call where you and I will get on you'll apply. And depending on what the application looks like, we'll spend some time with you and really see where we can create a breakthrough in that next level of breakthrough in your journey as a businesswoman or as a high-level C-suite woman, because I believe you're worth it. So let's take a look at that. And that would be the next step. We also do have a free gift. Are we putting that in the show notes, the free gift that I have for them?
Sure.
Can we do that? Mm-hmm. So currently we have a free gift for the 11 laws to living the limitless. Mm-hmm. And it's a mini video training. And I would love to share that as my gift to your audience of like, what are some of the principles of living that limitless life? And so these are laws, universal laws, that when you really start practicing them, for example, the law of alignment. So getting your values in alignment with your business would be an example. So I would love to give that, and we'll go ahead and I'll share that link and we can put it in the show notes. So the 11 laws for living the limitless training.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.